can have some fun. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, come on.
Or we just getting started?
We win this battle, we take the city.
Hey, Tommy. Make them suffer.
Now, there's been a new article that's been released teasing some huge storylines and plot points for Season 3. Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora were speaking to the TV line, and they dropped a lot of hints and teasers about what we can expect. Some of what they've teased, we've actually nailed it pretty much to the T. It doesn't mean we know exactly how it's going to play out, but we've spoken about some of the things that they've already teased already, and we're definitely going to get into that a bit later on in this breakdown. But they have also given us some new quotes, where they've teased that this is going to be one of the bloodiest seasons in Power history. They spoke about Tommy's web of enemies, a deadly triangle, Slick Vic, and also Claudia Flynn. Is she alive or is she dead? Now, they also spoke about a blast from the past and Power Universe crossovers. Who could that potential crossover be? Why and how? How does it impact not just the end of Force, but also what they're going to be doing after, which we know is Power Legacy. They also spoke about that at the end. So, as usual, there is a lot of new quotes to unpack, a lot of new spoilers and teasers for the upcoming season of Force. So stick with this video right through to the very end, because I will be breaking it down chapter by chapter. With that being said, let's dive into the new spoilers, news, and quotes. Now, we know this is the final season. We know they're probably going to be clearing the chessboard, and that means one thing: blood, death, a lot of violence. I think the latest teaser that we've seen was kind of just scratching the surface in terms of the violence that we're going to see in Season 3. And this is what Gary Lennon mentioned on that particular topic. It's probably our bloodiest season ever. People are going to be getting what's coming to them. Now, no doubt people are going to get what's coming to them. Whether you're talking about characters like Shanti, who's a snake, all the way to those characters in law enforcement from previous teasers. We even broke down how this reveal from Bobby DeFranco looks personal. So, from what we've seen, what they've teased so far in the early teasers and trailers, I have no doubt it's going to be the most bloodiest season we've seen for a while since Season 6 of Power. That season of Power, especially towards the end, was definitely the bloodiest we've ever seen. So, hopefully they can serve up something very similar, but at the same time, keep some realism and maybe even have some characters survive, and maybe even some characters go to prison. I'd like to think, based on what we saw at the end of Force Season 2, that's a big hint in terms of all of the outcomes are pretty much possible. But moving on to Joseph Sikora talking about some big problems with the CBI. Now, Tommy's enemies list is definitely longer than his rap sheet, and we all saw how long his rap sheet was back in Power. So this is what he had to say on his problems with those around him. He's at odds with not only the remaining Flynns, but obviously at least one half of the CBI. Does he truly trust Diamond? He knows that bond between brothers is strong, just like him and Ghost. I think he sees a lot of him and Ghost in that relationship between Diamond and Jenard. So he's on guard with that. He has a very worth adversary in Miguel. And I think that is certainly one of the overriding themes of this season. His relationship, not just with Mireya, but also with Miguel as well. Now, this is something we spoke about just a couple of days ago when we broke down some other quotes from Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora. So we're not going to spend too much time on this particular chapter, because Joseph Sikora already covered my theory almost pretty much to the T. He won't be able to trust Diamond because he knows how brotherly bonds work because of his relationship with Ghost back in Power. Gary Lennon post Season 2 even teased one of the key themes for Season 3 is going to be how blood is thicker than water. That also brought me over to my second point, which I do think Joseph Sikora hinted at in this quote. I honestly would not be surprised if the beef between him and the CBI got to the point where he actually joins forces with Miguel Garcia. This is something we definitely need to keep in mind going into Season 3, and this new quote from Joseph Sikora only adds further fuel to my earlier thesis. So again, keep that particular relationship in mind, Tommy teaming up with Miguel Garcia. But what did Gary Lennon say about this situation? The relationship between Tommy and Diamond is really fraught, because how much can he trust him? How much allegiance truly lies in Diamond's DNA with his own brother? In a triangle, there's always one person who loses out. I think we really play a great game of chess with these triangles this season, because one person certainly misses out in each triangle, but I think our audience would be surprised on who that person is. Now, first things first, there are a lot of triangles we do need to be mindful of going into the final season of Force. There's Tommy, Miguel, and Mireya. That's one. There's also Tommy, Vic, Flynn, and Diamond. There's also Vic himself, law enforcement, and also Tommy Egan. there's Jenard, Diamond and Shanti, and those are just a few. There are definitely a lot more. But when Gary Lennon mentions there's a lot of triangles this season, with one person missing out in each triangle, those are the sorts of triangles we do need to keep in mind. Just taking Jenard, Diamond and Shanti's triangle as an example, there's going to be a lot of betrayals and backstabbing in each triangle, trust issues, chess games that are going to be played. But will she be the one who misses out in that particular triangle? I think she will be. But I do think Gary Lennon's teasing not every single triangle will be easy to predict. There's going to be a lot of surprises. So when it comes to the deadly triangles, there's going to be a lot of them from Tommy, the CBI, Shanti, Miguel, Mireya Garcia to law enforcement, all the way down to JP, DMAC and K. Egan. At least that's my takeaway from the deadly triangles. Now on Mireya, this is a new quote from Joseph Sikora. Like Lakeisha, Mireya knows the streets, but again, like Holly, she's not a part of the game. And so there's this interesting balance in Mireya, as she brings this both legitimacy and this understanding and familiarity to Tommy. She's kind of the full package in a lot of ways to him, but she brings that Latin fire as well. She blows up, she flies off the handle, she's all pissing vinegar when she needs to be. I think that Tommy thinks that there's every chance that this man would kill his sister. Gary Lennon also mentioned, being in Tommy's life is always a very dangerous situation for any character, especially his love interest. But I think Joseph Sikora and myself were very interested in telling a real love story, so keep your eyes peeled. The love goes deeper, but you never know what's gonna happen. Now again with this particular chapter, it is something we broke down in my last video. We spoke about Lakeisha and we also spoke about the impact of Holly Weaver, but it's really interesting to hear Gary Lennon actually mentioning that him and Joseph Sikora sat down and spoke about how they were really keen on telling a real love story. The love is definitely going to be getting deeper, but we don't know what's going to happen come the end. Now that tells me they probably are going to have a different ending in store when it comes to Mireya. We know being a love interest of Tommy is always a dangerous situation, but could their time genuinely be the charm? Not counting Gloria, she was just a fling. Mireya's number 3 from what we know in Power and Force. Could their time be the charm for Tommy, which breaks the pattern from before in Power? I would like to think so, and I do think they will based on what they're teasing with this love story. And I will say again, I honestly would not be surprised if Mireya did end up pregnant. Honestly, it would add such a different dynamic to Tommy's character that we've never seen before. But let's move on to his relationship with K. Egan. Their deep-rooted dysfunction stems back to his troubled childhood. Gary Lennon mentioned that Tommy and Kate do love each other deeply. However, he acknowledged that being raised by Kate was probably very dangerous. There is no doubt in my mind, regardless if they're speaking to each other or not, that these two human beings deeply love each other, and that if one of them were in a place of need, the other will show up for them. It's just a messy kind of love. Now we know about this toxic relationship that dates all the way back to Power Season 2. Even before then we heard snippets from Tommy in conversation with Ghost about his mom back in Season 1. But this toxic relationship goes even deeper, and they did tap into a bit of it in Season 2.
There was that time when I was 6 years old and you disappeared for a fucking week and I had to fucking steal food from poor Mrs. Jenkins next door.
Now this is something I'm expecting them to go very deep on in Power Origins. The toxic relationship between Tommy and Kate. That's going to be one of the main story arcs when it comes to a young Tommy Egan. However, no matter what's happened in the past, no matter what happened in Season 2 towards the end, they do love each other. They have a funny way of showing it, but they definitely do. Even in the latest teaser that was released, we saw them back together where Kate even mentioned, make them suffer. It sounded personal. It sounded like Kate wanted revenge for something and Tommy's gonna go and set that shit straight.
Tommy, make them suffer.
Now, we know from history this relationship is never going to be perfect, but just judging by the one short clip from the teaser, they definitely will be there for each other. I'm just personally hoping Kate does survive the bloodbath that we're about to see in Season 3. But moving on to some new quotes about Vic Flynn, who they've titled as Slick Vic. Now on Vic Flynn, Joseph Sikora mentioned Shane Harper's performance in Season 3 was amazing. He said he went all in as a treacherous rat. Shane has kind of single-handedly turned that character into a very cerebral character who you can't quite trust if he's one step ahead or one step behind, and that inability to assess exactly where he is a chink in Tommy's armor. Gary Lennon also teased that fans would be very surprised by how the Tommy and Vic dynamic evolves. While snitches do get stitches in the world of Power, there is a possibility that Vic does survive. I think it's incredibly unsuspected where we go with it. Now again, this is something we've been saying for a very long time, even before Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora came out and did this interview with TV Line. I've been mentioning, even though Vic is a snitch, even though we know Tommy never lets snitches go in the world of power, they are going to be taking a different route with Vic. And based on Joseph Sikora and Gary Lennon's new quotes, maybe Vic is a character who's playing the game. Maybe at some point in season 3, he's actually the one who's 2 or 3 moves ahead. It does seem like Joseph Sikora's teasing that Tommy may not have Vic Flynn where he wants him. He may have him where he wants him at the beginning of season 3, because he's just uncovered that he's a rat, but coming to the middle and also the end, what's Vic's game? Now I did throw a theory out there in my last breakdown which I am going to stick to. I personally think Vic will somehow help Tommy and save him, or maybe even help save a loved one, where Tommy then says, you know what, fair play kid, you're a snitch but you saved my life, or you saved Mireya, or you saved D-Mac's life, and for that I'm going to let you go, but I never want to see you again. Vic in my opinion is a huge wildcard. Now this is a topic I haven't touched on recently because there's been nothing new up until now. So this is what Joseph Sikora and Gary Lennon had to say on Claudia Flynn. You will get a definitive answer about almost everybody in season 3. Claudia is so slick. These 2 Flynn kids were so underestimated, primarily by their father, to his own demise. Gary Lennon also teased that Claudia will have a very satisfying ending, but he did remain cryptic about her fate. Now let's give ourselves a very quick reminder in terms of what happened to Claudia at the end of 4 season 2. She was betrayed by Shanti, and they had a setup along with Markovic and the Serbs. They were arrested by Bobby DeFranco and the task force, and while Claudia was in jail, thanks to one of Shanti's cousins, she got sliced and diced. But does that mean she's dead? Look, we've all been around the world of power long enough to know Felipe Lobos, Lauren Baldwin, Kanan in season 2, Unique in Raising Kanan. But does that also mean she survived like they did? I personally don't think so, because it's the final season for Force, and what do they even do with her character if she is alive? There are so many other moving chess pieces on the board. Where does Claudia even fit? I personally think it's going to be cleared up in episode 1. Either way, whether she's dead or alive, I do hope it is cleared up early doors. If it isn't, if it is a question that kind of lingers on around, maybe past, I'd say episode 2, that's when I think we need to probably start asking some serious question in terms of where's Claudia Flynn? That's only if they probably don't answer the question in episode 1 or 2. But with Gary Lennon mentioning she's going to get a very satisfying ending, in my opinion, for what she did to Liliana, there's only one end for that particular character. So I am going to be sticking with my original prediction. Claudia Flynn, in my opinion, is dead. Now there was also a section on the TV Line article that also teased a blast from the past. Tommy's past will catch up with him one way or another. In the Power universe, we really love the idea of dropping breadcrumbs in shows and then having that breadcrumb arise and lead to a bigger storyline in one of our other TV shows. I love the actors that we've worked with before, and I like bringing them back and giving them something else to do in a very sort of surprising yet inevitable turn. So yes, you'll see familiar faces at times. Now a blast from the past. I think we all know who's going to be turning up in Chicago. I think we all know what we saw at the end of Go Season 4. Tariq is going to pop up to begin the next chapter. But we're going to be talking about Tariq St. Patrick in just a moment. But who else could this familiar face be? Could it finally be time where we see a hallucination scene from Ghost? I personally don't think it's going to be in Force. I do think there's more of a chance of it happening in Power Legacy, because I still do stand on my thoughts on that being Tommy's last and final chapter. And if it is, then they have to reunite Tommy with Ghost at least one last time in a hallucination. In terms of other characters, some of you may remember this breakdown from almost a year ago. The Italians, the Civello mob, Aunt Dolores, Elisa Marie Proctor and Carlo Civello. Now they, in my opinion, are a family that are going to be popping up in the storyline in some shape or form, whether it be in Force or whether it be in Power Legacy. Those 3 characters of Aunt Dolores, Elisa Marie Proctor, Carlo Civello, I can almost guarantee we're going to see them pop back up, and I do think it's going to be sooner rather than later, so definitely just watch this space. But who else could show up? Could it be 2-Bit? Could it be Kane? Brayden? Definitely let me know in the comment section what you guys think. But all in all, with these crossovers, with them teasing another show in Power Legacy, with Joseph Sikora already teasing that Tommy's chapter may be over in Chicago but his journey is far from over, is it really goodbye? Tommy Egan's life has been a constant hustle, and you think that he's just going to go from full speed to neutral at the drop of a hat. As Joseph Sikora points out, Tommy has been that guy that stays alive. Over the years, he's dedicated himself purely to the streets, and he's never going to snitch. Tommy is not a rat. Remember, Tommy said that he would rather die or go to jail than rat. That's it. Is Tommy going to have to reinvent himself like he did? Or rediscover what has already been there? That's what Tommy did back in Power Book 4 Force. I think there are ways to go. And as far as Joseph Sikora is concerned, as long as Gary Lennon is writing the character, I'm acting the character. Gary Lennon also mentioned that the ending might surprise everyone, and hinted that Tommy's future is looking like the bright face of a kid who just found out Christmas wasn't cancelled. If you know, you know. I feel like we're coming up with a story that will end this show of Force and sort of post us into the new one. I do think the audience would be very satisfied with this season. Now, we've already touched on this briefly before. I do think Tariq St crosses over, and I do think that will be the catalyst that officially sets up Power Legacy. The few things that we don't know at this moment in time is what brings Tariq over, what makes them possibly leave Chicago, and where do they end up? Of course, there are other questions like who crosses over with them, will D-Mac be in the picture, will Braden Weston be in the picture, could Kane Tejada be in the picture, maybe Tube, other characters, who knows. But the main questions are, at least in my opinion at this moment in time, what brings Tariq over, what makes them possibly leave Chicago, and where do they end up? Based on these quotes, I do think they may potentially be hinting maybe back in New York. How they make that work with Tommy being dead in New York, I mean, this is Power, and if they want to find a way, I guess they'll find a way. But let's just park that one for a moment. Just like Gary Lennon mentioned, this is closing one chapter but opening another, and we are just going to have to wait until the end to get all of those answers and more. At this moment in time, it's just a guessing game. I think they've got a lot of surprises up their sleeve, and it's going to be one hell of a season. It's going to be one hell of an ending to Force. Christmas is definitely going to be cancelled, but at the same time, it isn't cancelled. And that's where I'm going to leave it for this one, and also open the floor for you guys to drop your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.